So yeah, I guess there's a fortuity to the fact that it takes me forever to actually edit these videos and put them up on YouTube. I recorded this on the Monday, and then on the Tuesday we found out that Spider-Man may no longer be in the MCU because the partnership deal between Disney and Sony has fallen through in negotiations. We don't know exactly what this means for the future. It's pretty early. It's only been about a week after me recording this little voiceover that it happened. I do think Tom Holland will be coming back. I just don't think these movies will have any MCU connections from the foreseeable future. And this is a negative thing. This is not good. I think that Tom Holland works well with the other Avengers and the other MCU characters. It's a shame that this is happening. I will say it resolves a few of my issues with the character's depiction because, I do say that his connection to certain characters does kind of cause some issues, and that's no longer the case because he's no longer in the MCU. I just want to record this just to point out, yes, this is kind of hilarious in hindsight, especially me talking about Spider-Man Twitter, because people lost their minds on Twitter after this happened. And I'm talking a lot about MCU and Spider-Man in the MCU, and he is likely no longer going to be in it. I don't see them resolving this because it's between, like, billionaires with power who don't really care about these kind of connections and just how much money they can make off these properties. But, stranger things have happened. We don't know so yet. But again, to acknowledge, yes, I'm aware that Spider-Man is probably no longer going to be in the MCU. I do think this video still has a lot of relevant issues about how Tom Holland's Spider-Man works in his solo films, so I'm putting it up anyway. I did contemplate not even publishing this after that, but I do think there are some things that I bring up that are still relevant to how the characters are portrayed, so this is just me acknowledging that. So yes, enjoy the video.
Hey, let's talk about the writing of a fictional fucking character, because we have nothing better to do with our time as we await the inevitable heat death of the universe to destroy us all. Yay! Okay, cool. So it looks like I'm doing another MCU video because, there's not a fucking billion other of those on the internet. I mean, let's us all talk about Marvel for the rest of our lives, am I right? But this one, it's more to do with specifically Spider-Man, in particular the fan base surrounding Spider-Man, because people are very passionate about Spider-Man to a rather excessive degree, you could say. And I don't know, I don't want to be mean here, but there's like a certain subsection of Twitter that talks a lot about different incarnations of Spider-Man. And when I say different incarnations of Spider-Man, I of course mean the different film versions. And when I say the different film versions, I of course mean which is better, the Tobey Maguire one or Tom Holland one, because nobody gives a shit about Andrew Garfield. Come on, really. But this video in particular was inspired by one High Top Alex, who created a video a couple of months back talking about his opinion on Far From Home.
Far From Home is so focused on being fun, on being light, that it never explores its ideas or themes with any kind of weight. Once again, the lasting consequences for this version of Peter Parker are almost non-existent.
Now, I don't agree with everything Alex has to say. I'll link the video down below if you want to check it out yourself. I would recommend checking out his channel. He's very intelligent and he's really passionate about what he talks about. It's really good stuff. What it brought up was a discussion about how Peter should be depicted in film and stuff. And in particular, it made me think about my own thoughts about the Tom Holland solo films. Now, I don't really dislike them as much. I don't dislike Far From Home, definitely anyway, as much as Alex does, but I think they're fine. They're not terrible. I think they do a lot right, especially with the supporting cast. The villains are very compelling. But my problem seems to be with their version of Spider-Man himself. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Tom Holland is great in the role. He's very charming, he's very adorable. He's got that kind of youthful zest to him that really makes him enthusiastic about everything about him. But he works best when he's not in his solo films. He works best when he's in the broader team-up films. In his own films, I still think the actor's great, but I don't find his character that convincing or that compelling. He leaves me rather cold in that regard. And that makes me think a lot about the Iron Boy jab and people bringing up the fact that he's too dependent on Tony for his tech and bailing him out in certain spots and the mentorship stuff. But at the same time, I think it's unfair to say that stuff. I mean, he's been in weirder stuff before. He was in Spider-Man Unlimited. He was a tech billionaire at one point. He grew 4 arms at one point. I mean, I don't think you should limit Spider-Man to be a certain way because I think that limits the use of creativity with the character. Usually that complaint's brought up a lot, especially when it comes to his relationship with Tony. It's fact that he has no real money problems, and there's actually a lot of scenes cut out of Far From Home that exacerbated his money issues, which I think it was a shame to cut him out. I think they would have been really interesting. I don't think the money issue is what's taken from him that's so fundamental to Spider-Man. I think one of the things that really brings him down is that This Spider-Man is nowhere near as unlucky as the other ones are, because there are three things that define him as a character: responsibility, guilt, and shitty luck. The Parker luck. They have a name for it in the comics and everything. What makes Spider-Man so compelling for so long and makes him a long-standing character for as long as he's been here is his crappy luck and the fact that the world keeps pushing down on him. He keeps getting back up. That's what makes him so endearing. You take a look at Amazing Fantasy number 15 and the beautiful way it ended.
My fault. All my fault. If only I had stopped him when I could have, but I didn't. And now Uncle Ben is dead. And a lean, silent figure slowly fades into the gathering darkness, aware at last that in this world with great power there must also come great responsibility. And so a legend is born, and a new name is added to the roster of those who make the world of fantasy the most exciting realm of all. Ooh, so whispery.
It's not just that Ben got killed by this burglar, it's that it happened to be the burglar that Peter let go because of his own arrogance. And that's what makes that so powerful. Peter's bad luck defines him as a person. Is it a bit coincidental? I mean, yeah, it's a 60s comic book. But the point is, if it wasn't for that awful, awful bit of bad luck, we would not have a Spider-Man. I think a lot of the movies do that. Even the amazing films, which aren't that great, have Peter fall into these terrible situations because of bad luck. That's what defines him, and it's what leads to the terrible consequences in his life. That feels lacking in this new incarnation, especially in a solo films. I mean, sure, he loses Liz in the first film, but again, it doesn't feel like that's more consequence of his bad luck. It's more Vulture's terrible actions, and even then, they forgive each other very quickly. There's no sense of loss there. You don't feel it as much anyway. It's kind of taken from him. We see it again in Far From Home when, spoilers by the way, spoil Far From Home, when Mysterio gets him hit by a train and he goes all the way to fucking Sweden or somewhere, and that's a great moment, and it really lands him in the shit, and then he gets bailed out by Happy. Pretty simply, that's everything's solved for him. In the same film, there's where he gives Beck the glasses, a really stupid move which has immense consequences. But there's no consequences thrown towards him because the only person pissed off at Peter about that moment is himself. People don't give him shit for this. I think this is a bigger issue than all the gadgets and all the money and Tony being a mentor to him, because I never feel this Spider-Man has gone through the ringer like the other Spider-Men. And you take a look at something like Spider-Man 2, the greatest movie ever made, and you see him completely being shat on because the whole film is about whether being Spider-Man and having the bad Parker luck attached to it is worth it in the end. And I'm not saying this movie has to be Spider-Man 2, even though it could be more like it. I mean, it is the greatest movie that was ever created. But we have to get the idea that being Spider-Man can be kind of crappy as well as awesome. That's what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man. No matter what happens to him in his life, he never stops fighting. It's the cool powers and it's his sense of humanity that makes him such a compelling person to follow. And any other incarnation should have that element. We have some stuff like that. Like we have probably the best scene in Homecoming is when Iron Man rips into him and takes the suit from him, and that's great because that's an actual consequence, and it leads to one of the best moments where they do the replication of the Master Planet saga where he pushes the debris over his head. But that's the exception. It's not the rule. I feel like more stuff should be happening that isn't, and that's what kind of bums me out about this. There is potential to put this character through a lot of stuff, but they always take the easy way out. Even with the end of Homecoming, when Aunt May finds out, and it's showing a gag moment. There could have been a lot of pathos brought out of that, and a lot of drama, but nope. Literally, next movie, she's totally fine with it, consequence free. And I know the ending of Far From Home hints at major consequences for him in the next few movies, but again, it's a hint. Same with the Aunt May hint. We don't know how it's going to affect him. I hope it does. I hope there's some serious consequences. Outside of it being better for this character and essential to this character, I think it just makes better drama, makes better storytelling. Two of the biggest moments in the Spider-Man films, and the ones that people always go back to, are the train scene in Spider-Man 2 and the rise scene from Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse. The reason that is because Peter and Miles are put through the fucking ringer until they come to that moment where they realize that they are Spider-Man and they can be what they want to be. I'm not saying that Tom Holland needs to go through a moment specifically like this where he realizes the kind of hero he wants to be or whatever. I'm saying that we won't get a moment as deeply emotional, resonant, and powerful as this without the MCU Spider-Man going through something as harsh and as brutal as what Miles and Peter go through in those respective films. Because as fun and funny and as well shot, and even as distinctive as these movies can be, I never get the same emotional satisfaction as somebody who gets several wallops by the shameter and keeps on coming back and gets help from the people he's saving, because that is why he does what he does. With great power comes great opportunities for life to fuck you over, because the beauty of it is you never let that stop you from being Spider-Man.
A Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size.
You're probably wondering what the bag behind me is. It's a black bag in the room.